Hello, welcome to my presentation, a data-driven review of Cyclistic Bikeshare. My name is Darren Doherty, and I will be going over this review, which is going to be my case study or my capstone for the Google Data Analytics Professional Certificate. All right, so what is our story here? Cyclistic is a bike share company, meaning you can rent a bicycle from one station, ride it around for a little bit, and then turn it back into another station. The company is located in Chicago. I work here as a data analyst. I've been speaking with the company's director of marketing. She has a goal. She wants to convert what she calls casual riders into an annual or a subscription-based rider. And to begin that process, she has given me a business question, which is how do annual members and casual riders use cyclistic bikes differently? So with that question in mind, I will apply my skills and methodology and data analysis to answer that question, and then I will also provide 3 insights for meeting your goal. All right, before we get too far into it, let's do a little bit of background information. So Cyclistic breaks down its customers essentially into 2 market segments. We have our annual members who are subscription based. They get that subscription and then they can take as many bike rides when and where they want. And then there's also the casual riders. That's comprised of people who purchase a single ride pass and people who purchase a single day pass. Both of them are looked at as casual riders. And our goal, we want to convert those casual riders into annual subscription-based members. Okay, for the remainder of this presentation, I have a quick outline here. I will first go over the data I was provided. I'll go over my techniques for cleaning and manipulation of that data, the analytical work I did on it, and then finally my answers or those 3 insights, suggestions to how our director of marketing can convert those casual riders to annual members. Let's look at the data. So for data, I used 12 files, each one representing a month of cyclistic rides from July of 2023 all the way through June of 2024. I obviously could not fit an entire spreadsheet over here, but just as a quick example, I have a little snip. You can tell it's your basic spreadsheet with columns of data and rows of data, with each row signifying a particular ride by a customer. I have my column names here, which are pretty self-explanatory, but I'll go over them real quick. Our ride ID is just a signifier, a unique identifier. We have the rideable type, which is electric or a classic bike. We have 2 columns signifying when a ride began and ended. Then we have start station name and ID, as well as end station name and ID. Just tells you where the ride began, where it ended. Then we also have geographic coordinates with that same information. And we have member casual, which is probably the most important for this because that tells us whether a specific ride was undertaken by a casual rider or a subscriber. All in all, there were over 5.7 million observations across these 12 files. Now that we understand the data, let's go over some of my techniques for cleaning and manipulation. These are really just bullet points. The main things I did, the first of which I did in Excel. I created 2 calculated columns, ride length, subtracted starting time from ending time, gave me a ride's length in minutes, day of week, which was also centered on that start time, just told me what day of the week it occurred. Sunday is 1, Monday is 2, just gave me numerical values all the way to Saturday, which is 7. I removed rows that had 0 or less than or 0 ride length, meaning that the end time came before the start time. I did this in R, and I did this just because I knew that it was bad data. Probably a mistake made somewhere, either somebody like checked out a bike and checked it right back in an error, or if it was entered manually, they might have reversed the values. Doesn't really matter. I know it was bad data. I had 5.7 million rows, so more than enough where removing these would not affect my the integrity of anything too much. I ordered all the rows by starting time in R, and then I created a few data frames. I created a master data frame of all my monthly reports that held all 5.7 million rows in it. And I used that master data frame to create a few sub data frames. I created one for the subscription customers. I created one for the casual customers. And then I also created a few special ones. So one of the things I did later was I analyzed the geographic data in Tableau. So I created a special sub-data frame to export just the coordinates into Tableau. And that's mainly a performance thing. I wanted to make the file as lean as possible when I put it into Tableau. And for analysis, remember I'm trying to answer that one basic question: how do the annual riders and the casual riders, how do they use the bikes differently? To answer that question, I looked at three main factors. I looked at daily usage trends, so like what days of the week do the two groups use the bikes the most? I looked at ride length, so how long does each group ride the bikes on average? And then I looked at geographic data. So where do the two groups ride these bikes? And for each one of these, I have a little visualization. Daily usage. So what we're looking at is for our two customer groups, what day of the week do they ride the most? To look at that, I created three bar graphs here in ggplot, and I know it's a little small, but that's okay because the great thing about these bar graphs is that really all you need to do is look at the shape, and that gives you a lot of insight. So up top here, we have all of our customers. So this is both groups put together. You can see each day of the week they rode the most. Down here on the bottom, we have our members on the left, our casual riders on the right. So what I said earlier about looking at the shape, if we look at all of the customers put together, you can see demand is pretty flat throughout the week with a little bit of a bump over here on Saturday. And looking at that, you could infer that demand is flat. But if we break this down by customer segmentation, we see a much different story. If we look over here on our members, you can see that demand is relatively low on day 1, which is Sunday, and day 7, which is Saturday. And throughout the week, it goes up. You almost have a dome shape if I add my trend line here. And the exact opposite is what you see if you look at the casual riders. So very low demand throughout the week, a little bit more on Friday, but the majority of the usage is from weekend days, so Sunday and Saturday, and you get this bowl shape. With this in mind, I kind of put together two inferences here. Um, that is that members tend to ride on weekdays and casual riders tend to ride on weekends. Now let's look at ride length. Now, fear not, I have a bigger version that I will show on the next slide of this plot here. But before I show that, I just wanted to go over what we're looking at. I took a random sample of 500 members and 500 casual riders throughout the year and combined them into the scatter plot. And our little orange points are our casuals, our little blue triangles are our members, and broke it down by when the ride occurred down here on the x-axis and how long the ride lasted. Let's look at our bigger version. Let's take a better, bigger look at the ride lengths. So like I said earlier, we have these little red or orange dots. Those are our casual riders. We have these blue triangles. That's going to be our members. So they are plotted by the date that the ride occurred. And in the y-axis, we have our ride length. Now, I mentioned earlier that I did a random sampling of 500 members, 500 casual riders. It wasn't completely random. I excluded anyone that had a ride length over 120 minutes or 2 hours. So you can see that's the top of this chart. And that played a role in the statistics, which I'll show here in a second. But looking at this chart, one thing I really like about it is because it shows an entire year of data, it actually highlights some trends. So when you look at the fall and winter months starting around October all the way through January, as it gets colder, rides just disappear. There's not nearly as many in total. and the ones that are there are typically shorter, and the opposite happens in spring. So as we get warmer, you can see the rides pick up again, both in quantity and length. So if we just examine this looking at the lengths of the rides, you can tell that these blue triangles, which represent our members, there's a lot clustered down here at the bottom. And as you go further and further, except for this little outlier blue triangle here of a really long ride, most of the longer rides, like above an hour, most of those are our casual members. I compiled some means here. So our member mean is 12.18 minutes. Our casual mean is 17.65 minutes. And that's just for the sample here. I mentioned before that including those outliers would kind of change this. If we look at the entire population, which is all 5.7 million observations, our member mean goes up to 13.17. Doesn't really move this line too much at all, but our casual mean goes up to almost a half hour. So the actual mean, if you watched it rise up there, rises up significantly. And if you take all of that into consideration, one abundantly clear fact that you can see here is that the casual riders take longer rides, over double on average. And let's look at geography. So if you remember when I described my data earlier, I told you that there was a starting latitude longitude and an ending latitude longitude for each observation. I took 100,000 of these and put them together as a mean. So I got a mean starting longitude and latitude and a mean ending longitude and latitude. And I took these means as they represent the average and where they kind of show that riders are pulling towards, and I plotted them in Tableau and further divided that by day of week and member casual. At a very high level, literally a high level, because we're looking at the city of Chicago from a high level, you got Lake Michigan over here in the east. If we look at the geographic means for that latitude and longitude, you can see in this little heat map, there's a cluster right here around Chicago. But let's zoom in a little bit. All right, so this is the exact same map that you just saw. However, it's broken into two filters. We have our members on the left, casuals on the right. And the plots here are the means for each day. So remember, 1 is Sunday, 7 is Saturday. And I think looking at it like this gives some pretty neat insights. One thing that is true for both of them is that our weekends, our 1 and our 7, are significantly further north compared to our weekdays. However, if you look at the members, you can see that east to west, really not a whole lot of variance. They go further north on weekends, but I mean, it's a pretty straight stack there. However, with our casuals, we have this cluster of weekdays here. We have Monday kind of an outlier off on its own, but if you look at this group, the casual riders are not only further north, but they're also pulled up towards the east as well. And one thing that I think this lends credence to is this continuing thought I've had of casual riders being visitors to the city. So that kind of correlates with the fact that they rent bikes on weekends more than weekdays. You know, they're in town for a vacation or like a weekend convention, a concert, whatever brings them to the city of Chicago. They are there for only a few days. So that's when they want to ride a bike and go out and see all the sights and everything. That explains the weekend-centric behavior. That explains their tendency to take longer rides. So they want to ride for an hour or two and go around and see a lot of sights. And if you look at this geographic data where we're being pulled up, by up, I mean north and to the east, that takes you up to kind of like the lakefront area. A little bit north of the downtown area, but along Lake Michigan. Now, I'm actually not very familiar with the Chicago area. I had to pull up a Google map here and search for attractions as if I was a tourist visiting and see what popped up. But what I'm seeing does kind of lend some credence to that hypothesis I have going on about casual riders being visitors. And if you look at the star here, which shows the approximate area we just looked at in the last slide where our heat maps were, and then kind of take into consideration that our casual riders kind of trended north and east. Again, this kind of makes sense to me. You have this very tightly packed downtown area, but a lot of that is highly walkable. If we're looking for places where a visitor to Chicago might want to ride a bike, then this kind of northeast area makes total sense to me. You're getting outside of the area that is very walkable and easy to get around on foot, but you want to go up the lakefront. You want to go check out Westridge Nature Park. Very bikeable, especially if you have an hour or two. And we saw again that casual riders take those longer rides. So if we look at the kind of trend that our casual riders geographically are pulling to, again, this kind of just keeps making me think that this casual rider class are comprised of visitors to Chicago. So let's kind of just recap everything that I discovered and hypothesized through my data analysis. So we saw casual riders overwhelmingly rent their bikes on weekends, and the members largely rent bikes on weekdays. So kind of goes along with that thought I have of casual riders being visitors, and then members use them for shorter trips throughout the week, like commuting to work or commuting for groceries, that kind of thing. We see that casual riders take much longer rides than members do, actually over twice as long. And then we also see that casual riders take rides that start and stop to the east and slightly to the north compared to members. All of this kind of comes together, again, supporting that thought I have that casual riders are visitors to Chicago. Let's put everything together and get to those three recommendations that I talked about at the beginning of this presentation. So, considering that casual riders, we want to convert them to subscribers, but considering that they are likely visitors to Chicago, how are we going to do that? How do you convince somebody who's only there for a few days to become a subscriber? Well, one idea I had was a type of corporate subscription. So if these are visitors to Chicago, then you could create a corporate subscription program for local hotels. The hotel signs up, and whoever is staying there has access to the cyclistic bikes as a perk. You have, free breakfast, a pool, a gym, and access to bikes. So kind of bundle it together with hotels, that kind of thing, which would be appealing to people who are staying there and who otherwise wouldn't want to buy a subscription for an entire year. Another factor that would appeal to these casual riders, especially if they are these visitors who are out for long period sightseeing, is to have comfortable bikes. I don't know, other than standard, what kind of bicycle Cyclistic uses, but I know a lot of commuter bikes for cities have like really skinny wheels, kind of an upright position. I'm thinking something along the lines of like a beach cruiser that has wider tires, wider seats that are just more comfortable for a long ride, because that's the kind of bike that a person who goes out sightseeing is out for a long time viewing multiple attractions. That's the kind of bike that they are probably going to want to ride, as opposed to something made for like cutting through traffic as quickly as possible. And then geographically, looking at that data that we plotted in Tableau, I would say to introduce some more stations in the northeast area of Chicago. That is where a lot of these casuals are kind of pooling to at the moment. It appears that is in biking and walking vicinity of like downtown, where a lot of them are going to be staying. So having more places to find a bike to turn in the bike you have is going to be more appealing to these customers who are using bikes in that area. If you made it through the presentation, I appreciate you watching. If you want to reach out to me, pretty easy to get a hold of. My email is darren@darren.pro, and my LinkedIn is just my name /Darren Doherty. Thank you so much for watching. If you're ever in Chicago, please rent a bike from my fake rideshare program because my fake job depends on it. Thank you so much for watching.